We have looked at American political polarization through the eyes of Generation Z and experts on the issue. And now we are going to sit down and discuss polarization as well as democracy through a global lens. With us, we have originally from the Ivory Coast, Innocent Asuman. And then from India, we have Ritu Prasad. And from South Africa, we have Iswa, or Z for short. And would you like to introduce yourself for us?
Yes, I am Soma Kashalala. You may call me Exi. I'm from South Africa.
Perfect. Thank you all so much for coming and talking with me today. So to start off, we recently have had an election here in the U.S. So how do you perceive the United States government system compared to your home country? And then Exi, would you like to start us off?
Yes. So growing up in South Africa and watching American news and the American voting, it has always been thought to be the most democratic, the most free world. And I envied American democracy. But now that I'm here and I got to watch as the elections were ongoing and what people were saying, it surprised me how one, young people are not voting. Yeah.
And you know, it's interesting that you say that because we actually had a bigger Generation Z turnout in this election than we haven't had in the past. It was around 25%. So would you say younger people in South Africa tend to vote more than young people here?
Yes, our democracy is very young. It is 28 years old. Yeah, we just got our democracy in 1994. So voting is one of the things that Black people could not do before 1994. So we still have that in mind. We still have the privilege, like we can still see what a privilege it is to vote. So people really do turn out to vote.
Ritu, how would you say that comparison looks with India?
So I would say in what I feel or what I have seen, the US democracy is representation of majorly two parties, Democrats and Republican, whereas we in India, the representation of democracy is parliamentary, where it's not the two parties are running the country, like contest is between two parties, not at all. We have many regional parties and they are the big player. So that's the one difference, major difference between America and Indian politics. So in India, the regional players are equally forceful and they kind of decide the politics of India. That's the interesting fact about Indian democracy.
Innocent, I wanted to ask you, how do you think your worldview, coming from the Ivory Coast to the U.S., how do you think your worldview helps you lessen polarization or see some of those different sides? What is, if that makes sense? Yeah.
Yes, it does. Thank you for the question. Actually, I think getting the opportunity to be exposed to different contexts, like my country, and I also get the opportunity to visit other countries in Africa before coming here, it helped me to always try to caution myself. Like, do I think that what I see is the truth? So I start questioning truth. I start questioning ideologies. I start questioning concepts. So like, even when we use the word democracy, for instance, I think the exposure switched my understanding and my perception about democracy. And today I do believe that democracy should be contextualized. It doesn't have to be a kind of copy and paste, like democracy that can work in the American context. I'm not sure that can work in my country, Cote d'Ivoire. It can't work in our context. Why? Because we do have some cultural values, some knowledge that they qualify as indigenous knowledge, which is part of our cultural identity, that we cannot build democracy beyond. What I'm trying to say here, an example will be in my country and most of the West African country, we have a traditional structure that we rule under kingdomship. And those traditional people have power, and it is symbolic. So in a rural community, we have a king, and the king has under like his supervision some elders. So whenever there is a decision at a state level, the king can decide that this decision we are abiding to it or not. And so I think these are some of the layers when they are talking about democracy in our context. So in order to think about how we can incorporate those kind of knowledge in our new way to institutionalize democracy, in my country, initially they were excluding them and they qualified them as this is indigenous. And we are in a modern time where we need new perception. But today, because the country was hit by two political crises in 2002 and 2010. So after that, the new government has decided and they have understood the power of those kings. So today they are institutionalized, the kingdoms. And so I think this is a way to see how we can formalize or frame a new kind of democracy in the African context, like in my country. So when I come here and I hear about democracy, I think things are actually different. Why? Because I do still believe, even though we talk about technology, US is a developed country, I do believe that within rural communities, we do still have people who knows the history, who are culturally embedded. And oftentimes they call those people as maybe conservatives. How often do we open the door for them to hear their voice, to understand what they think about, and what is the perception about the new decisions that we are making? So I think there is always room for improvement in how we frame democracy globally.
Thank you all so much for coming. Innocent, Ritu, and Exie, thank you so much for talking with me today. Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for
so
having
much
us.
Thank you.
for having
Thank you.
us.
Yeah.
Thank you.